So this isn't really easy for me to share. Um, it's never something I wanted to speak about publicly, basically just out of sheer fear of being criticized and being judged. I wasn't always the best father. I like to think that I'm a great father today, but that just wasn't always the case. See, I can remember when myself and a friend of mine, we were transporting large quantities of heroin back and forth from Baltimore, Maryland to West Virginia. I had the mother of my child in the car with me this time, along with my 6-month-old daughter. And we were under investigation and we had no clue. And we got pulled over and asked for our credentials, and they searched the vehicle, but they didn't find anything. But they did search my daughter's diaper. She was 6 months old and she was strip searched on the side of the highway. And that's definitely one of my lowest points. And still after that, I just didn't change anything. So I went away again, back to prison after that, and I served more time. And I came home and I thought I was doing well again. I was just drinking. And I always thought that if I just drank and I wasn't using drugs, as long as I could pass a drug test, everything would be okay. And eventually it led back to the same thing. And I actually was arrested and booked multiple times on parole violations. I had a 60-day period where I was booked on parole violations 11 different times. And one way or another, I would always wiggle my way out or manipulate to get another chance and another chance and another chance. And then I got back out just in time for Julie to give birth to my son Cameron. And she gave birth to Cameron, and I still didn't use the drugs. And then on the way home, I had this feeling in my gut. I need to get home and I need to get rid of these before I end up taking them. I have my newborn son in the car with me. I have my daughter with us. I have Julie, their mother, with us. And when we got to the house, there was actually a note that was left. And I was asked to report to parole. I was in the hospital at the time. I was actually kind of doing the right thing, but according to parole, I definitely wasn't. And at the end of the day, rules are rules. When we saw that letter, we packed everything up and we took off. And we went on the run to hide me out. And Cameron had some health conditions when he was born. And at this time, he's not even a month old, and he has a heart and lung monitor hooked up to him. And we got to keep an eye on him, very close eye on him. Things are real scary and sketchy with him, with his health and just being on edge. And when we take off and we're on the run, I'm actually staying at a drug dealer's house with Maya, Cameron, and Julie, and myself, and we're sleeping on a mattress in his living room, basically out in the middle of nowhere. And then early one morning, I had a feeling. You kind of get those feelings when you're on the run and you're living out there. And I just knew something was up. And I got up with Cameron that morning while Julie and Maya was asleep, and I walked out to the front yard. And at about that time, I'd say 10 or 15 cars and SUVs pulled up in the front lawn, and U.S. Marshals got out of the car with parole, with assault rifles, and they handcuffed me. I had to hand Cameron over. They handcuffed me, and I didn't see Cameron for a long time after that, Maya or Julie. A while later, after I'm in prison, I hadn't talked to Julie too much. I'd already put her through so much. Honestly, she was done with me, and I understood that. So I let her go. I let her do what she had to for herself and the kids, and I just focused on doing my time. But I hadn't talked to her for a while, or heard from her in a while, and I wasn't able to call her from the prison phone. So I asked the counselor to let me make a phone call home. And when I did, I was told that Cameron was on life support, that he had been airlifted to Children's Hospital, and that his oxygen had dropped. I think it's like 2% or 10%. His mother had to make funeral arrangements and that they had to pull the plug. And they took Julie, and this is, I just know what she's told me. Of course, I was in prison, but Julie had to leave the room, and they pulled the plug. And thankfully, by the grace of God, Cameron started breathing on his own. And even after all of that, after all of the stuff I had put them through, after everything that I had put myself through, I completely tore apart the family. I completely broke Julie down. I put those kids through so much. And of all those years that Julie and I were together, I had really only a matter of months where I was out free, and I had no time, as long as she had ever known me, where I didn't abuse drugs or alcohol in one way, shape, or form. I finally got released. I got released to a halfway house in Huntington, West Virginia. And I'd like to say I hit the ground running and that I'd learned my lesson, but I didn't. I still kept doing the same thing. Eventually it got so bad and I ended up homeless and living at the city mission with just the clothes on my back. I had hit rock bottom more times than I could count. Every time I thought I'd hit rock bottom, I just kept digging deeper and deeper. But I think what really made a difference this time was immediately I got connected to others. I found people who were in recovery. I found people who were like myself. And it wasn't as hard as what I thought it would be to find people like myself. I started going into different fellowships and networking, looking for people who had been where I'd been, who had come from what I'd come from, people who had honestly been poor parents and turned it around and became great parents. I never wanted to be a bad father. And still to this day, I'm not entirely sure I really loved my kids. And that's not easy for me to admit, because the way I feel about them today, how in love I am with them today, I could never imagine ever making a decision like that to lose them. And I wanted to be a great man. I wanted to be a great father. In turn, that benefited them. So I do it for my children today, but I do it all together because I want to be a better person and I love myself today. I'm thankful for myself today, as silly as that sounds. I thank God that I'm able to take direction. I thank God that when I need help, when I need a resource, I will reach out for it, and I'm willing to go to any length today.